All right, welcome to the Jim Acosta Show. And Donald Trump's attacks on the Constitution continue. He is defending the Justice Department's indictment of his perceived enemy, former FBI Director James Comey. And here to talk about America's slide into authoritarianism, and that is no overstatement at this point, folks, is something of an expert on the subject. It is Randi Weingarten, who comes back to the program. She is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, and she has a brand new book out. It is called Why Fascists Fear Teachers, Public Education and the Future of Democracy. Randi, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh my God, it is always my honor. I always look forward to talking to you, Jim, and what you're doing right now is just so important. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for writing this incredible book. And, before we jump into the book, and I definitely want to do that, I know you are someone who cares deeply about American democracy. Your thoughts on the indictment of James Comey? He put out a video and said, my heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system. I'm innocent, so let's have a trial. This hit a lot of people in the gut last night as just a very disturbing moment for our country. What were your thoughts?
So I felt for him. I
Yeah.
felt for his family, because this is the kind of fear that well, let me take a step back.
Yeah.
This is not about justice. This is about creating fear and being retaliatory to people you believe have not been on bended knee. And that's what Trump is doing. Comey, I mean, if the irony here is that many people believe that Comey's actions are the reason that Trump was president in the first place.
Right.
And so, but it's so ironic that Comey, who has quite the independent streak, which you have to have if you are the head of the FBI or the CIA, if you're going to be basically a servant of the people as opposed to a servant of an authoritarian. And what has happened here is it seems completely bogus what they have charged him with, but it is intended to create fear and trepidation and to stop people from taking the streets or from actually speaking up on freedom's behalf or on their own behalf. And that's what it's intended to. It's not just a retaliation tour by the president. It's not just an abuse of power. It's not just a violation of law. I'm not saying that in any way to undermine those things, but it is about sending a message to the rest of us that that we should shut up.
Yeah.
And I think that the most important thing we do is to actually then be out on the streets in force on No King's Day. Because if, just like what happened in June, when people across the country, 5 to 7 million, went out and said, no, 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 our founders said no kings, and we say no kings. I think it's important to send the president and his acolytes a message that regardless of what your ideological beliefs are, America believes in freedom, and we believe in the rule of law, and we believe that people should have free speech as long as it's not violent and not insightful, and we believe in justice and in basic humanity and dignity and basic opportunity and liberty. And I think this is that moment that we need to, every one of us needs to stand up and say it, if we're able.
No, I agree with you 100%. And kings don't like folks out there, speaking out against the throne. And neither do fascists. And
No.
and fascists. I mean, this is a hallmark of fascism: going after one's political enemies. and using whatever cockamamie kangaroo court system you can come up with to punish people who speak
Right.
out against you. And you have this very important new book. It made the New York Times bestsellers list, Why Fascists Fear Teachers, Public Education, and the Future of Democracy. And Randy, I have to read an excerpt from the book because it is just so wonderful, and it's so perfect for this moment. It has something to do with something I see on your jacket right now, which I'll get to.
Yeah.
But it says, the book starts off with a bang. It says, among the first to protest the Nazi takeover of Norway were the country's teachers. And since pins and badges with the likeness of the exiled king were now illegal, teachers and students used a clever, subtle signal to show their resistance. They wore paper clips, as Randy is showing right there. When teachers wore them on their lapels, it signified that they remain united, bound together like a stack of papers against Nazi rule. The protest spread. Eventually, students took to wearing whole chains of paper clips like necklaces. And I hate to think that we're in a moment like this now. We're obviously not as far down the road as the Norwegians felt back then. But why is the paperclip and this anecdote important to you?
So the reason I use this anecdote is that, and I've now seen other people, through a whole different way of being. E. Jean Carroll, and who I saw after I saw her on Joyce Vance's podcast. I texted her. I said, "Oh my God, I use this story in my book." Um, but this is what the story does.
Yeah.
It says the two things that are really, really important, I think, in actually believing in community and actually and believing in a society, and that our future can be better than our past, is community and education. And what the paperclip story said to me is that in the darkest hour of Norway, because it was Nazi occupation. Yes,
Yeah.
it wasn't what happened in Poland. It wasn't what happened in Ukraine, where there was where there was tremendous devastation, where whole cities were burned down. In Norway, the Nazis just occupied, but they then also took away every freedom, including education. They tried to force every teacher to be in their Nazi group that they were starting. And what teachers basically said is no, and instead that they were bound up together with each other and with their kids. And so it created a sense that education was really important,
Mm.
and a sense that community was really important. And even in the darkest moments, 12,000 of the 14,000 teachers in Norway wore these paper clips. And I
Wow.
heard this story from Norwegian teachers literally about 10 years ago. And it always stuck with me as a way of saying, how do you bind people together? And look, it was for Norwegian teachers to wear it at that point. It's not as if it was nothing.
Right.
But it's not like it takes a lot to wear a paperclip. And so
Yeah.
it was a symbol of being together, of opposing tyranny, of opposing fascism, of opposing that kind of government control of who they were. And the fact that their kids did it, and the fact that all of them did it, and then the fact that parents did it, and the fact that they did it after schools were closed, and they still kept teaching, and they still kept wearing the paper clips. I thought it was a very prophetic story, and I
A-
wanted to raise it. And look, Jim,
Absolutely.
I wrote I use the word fascist very purposely.
Yeah, I
And
was going to ask you. Yes.
many people have asked me this week if I regret it. And I often say, and I'll say to you what I've said to them, no, of course not. I was intentional about it because it's a warning. And the people who have raised whether I should have used it, like one of the people who are close to the guy who just said I should be executed, Jeremy
Mm.
Cobb. I mean, I'm like, are you going after the people on your side who actually use vile language? I
Wow.
I wrote it and used the term because it's a warning. And why? Because I watched, I mean, I'm sure you did too. I watched the end of the election cycle in 2024 and saw just how people had no idea what fascism is. And
That's
look,
right.
I'm a high school social studies teacher. I'm to blame too that people don't know what fascism is, what authoritarianism is, that we don't have enough time in curriculum to actually teach comparative government.
Mm,
We teach about American history. And frankly, we never got close to, fascistic government in America. There were bits and pieces in the 30s, but we never got close. And
yeah.
so people don't know it. And when General Kelly tried to create a warning at the end of the last October, November, people dismissed it as political, as
Right.
opposed to, we need to take this seriously. Now, I hope we never get there. But if
Yeah.
you don't actually understand what fascistic behavior is, then you don't understand what happens when there's this demonization to dehumanization of people, so that you no longer not just not like your enemies or your opponents, but you do something like, the president said at Charlie Kirk's funeral, when he said to, Kirk's wife, well, I'm glad that you can forgive people, but I can't forgive my enemies. I hate my enemies. And then, or I hate my opponents. And then
Yeah.
look what he just did to Jim Comey.
Exactly. And let's not forget, during the campaign, he used fascistic language. He talked
Right.
about the enemy from within, and people say, "Oh, how can you say that? That's over the top. You're bloviating. You're engaging in hyperbole." It is by definition fascistic language.
Right.
And to have it come from a presidential candidate, we just have not ever really had that happen in this country, Randy. And I think it's an excellent point that I don't think people are educated enough to understand that it was just staring them right in the face.
And if you don't,
Yeah,
if I mean, this will sound a little silly. I'm a big believer in education. And
me
if you
too. Yeah,
don't educate about what the behavior is, if people can't recognize, if they don't recognize the behavior because they've never been taught about it, and they just don't believe, how many people can't grok that we could ever lose our democracy? And look,
yeah,
how many times did we hear first Trump term, the guardrails stood, they stood. But look what's happening right now. The
yeah,
the disappearing, just this week, the disappearing of people, the going after not-for-profits, the going after entities that fund democratic causes because
yeah.
you think
He's
that
talking
they are
about
your
going after
enemy,
Soros. Yep,
going after
exactly.
Soros. I mean, all of
Yeah,
this, the saying that Comey is not the last, the basically firing of a U.S. Attorney because he said that no, there's no case against Letitia James. I mean,
right.
the language that Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance used, the fact that that after the assassination, that two superintendents, state superintendents of schools, instead of actually saying to teachers all across America, wow, we just all saw this really horrible thing. And in the next couple of days, virtually all of you have done the right thing to try to calm a nation down. What did they do? They didn't put guidance out to calm a nation down. Two of them put a memo out saying snitch on, your
Right.
colleagues. And all
Yeah.
of this is not just democratic backsliding. It is a sense that the freedoms that we have enjoyed as Americans are really at risk. And that's fascistic behavior.
Yeah. And Randy, I have to ask you about something else that I saw in the headlines. The American Federation for Teachers was mentioned in stories as they relate to Jimmy Kimmel. I saw something in Rolling Stone saying that attorneys representing two groups of Disney shareholders are demanding records related to the company's decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel over at ABC. And I believe AFT was one of those. Am I getting that wrong there?
No,
Is
no,
that,
you're not getting it. Look,
what
we
did you think
do.
about that? Because that was, you are a teacher. You obviously believe in free expression, free speech. What happened to Kimmel was a very disturbing
It was very disturbing,
example. Yes.
just like what happened to Colbert was very
Yeah.
disturbing. I mean, Tim Snyder says, when you get rid of the comedians, when you
Mm,
stop being able to laugh at yourselves, that is a very dangerous, not just a dangerous backsliding of democracy, it's a dangerous backsliding of freedom, of freedom. And he uses what happened in Russia when they drove out all of the comedians. So I mean, separate and apart from, we need a little bit of laughter in our lives, and we need to laugh every now and then.
yeah.
But the reason we you know we our members are, they have retiree assets, and they are in pension funds all up and down America, and we are very active in engaging in making sure that our assets are not used for despicable purposes.
Mm,
We have to be very careful about our fiduciary duty. And look, I give Disney a lot of credit for putting Jimmy Kimmel back on. I think that that was important, and I give them credit. But I think that there is a backstory here about what the pressure was on corporate America. I mean, it's
right.
the fact that the United States government now owns a portion of Intel, the fact that there's such consolidation in the media industry. There's probably a backstory here, and just like there were people who were saying release the Epstein files, release the Holman files, on behalf of shareholders of Disney. We said, let's get the books and records so that we understand what the decision-making process was.
Mm. Release the Kimmel files is what it sounds like you're saying.
Exactly, exactly,
Well, we would
exactly.
like to see that. And I have to mention, I mean, there's so much, it's like sipping from a fire hose as usual with Trump. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, and I don't want to hold you up too long, is that the education department really is getting decimated in this country, and school systems are being targeted by the Trump education department. Apparently in New York City and Chicago, Fairfax County, the Trump administration is going after funding for those school systems, trying to dictate how they teach, how they care for kids, and so on. And again, it feels as, I mean, I remember the day, Randy, you've been involved in politics for some time. Conservatives used to say, get the federal government out of local schools.
Right.
This administration wants to be hyper involved in local schools, and they want to dictate what goes on.
Well, this administration is trying to have it both ways.
Yeah.
So first, they say over and over again, there shouldn't be a federal Department of Education because states should control education. But guess what? States do control education. They've always controlled education. If until Brown versus Board of Education, there the Constitution was interpreted to mean that separate but equal was illegal under the Constitution. Until the Brown case, what we essentially had was 50 and then territories, so say 55 separate ways of doing education around the country. And frankly, most of us believe that that should be what happens, that education needs to be locally based. There are many local school boards that are that are elected. They run the education of our youth in the country, states and
Yeah.
localities. So when the Trump administration says it should go back there, it's there already. What the federal government does, and I use this story about Lyndon Johnson in my book, not as president, but as a teacher from the Hill Country. And
Mm,
why did he focus so much on civil rights? His lived experience teaching Mexican American kids who were so poor they did not wear shoes to school. And
mm,
Title One, the money that goes for the 25 million kids in America who are poor under the poverty line, That money is to level the playing field so that if you give kids an opportunity to soar at young ages, then they become the innovators of America. And
Right.
that's why you have the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. That's why you have the Title I. That's why you have these acts that are run from the Department of Education that are supposed to level the playing field. So a poor community that doesn't have the tax base can still actually have funding for their kids so their
Mm.
kids can have computers or lower class size or sports or things like that. So
Yeah.
what the department what she's really doing, what Trump is really doing is they're taking away the funding and firing people that anchor opportunity. So,
Yeah.
we thought, I'll give you one example and then and talk about what's going on in New York and Chicago right now. Take the issue around student debt. 45 million people in America have some kind of student debt. During the
Mm.
Obama administration, because of that recession, it was all moved from Sally Mae and Freddie Mac um, to the um, to the Department of Education.
Right.
We have spent a lot of time trying to make it more affordable, trying to make sure that people who are entitled to various different student debt programs get it. So what has happened since Linda McMahon has been secretary? All those programs are basically stopped.
Mm.
There's thousands of people who can't get an answer to their question when they have Mohila as a loan servicer about whether they should pay X or Y. And now,
Wow.
when they don't pay their loan on time, what did Linda McMahon do? Sent them to debt collectors. So they can't get their
Wow.
questions answered, and she sends them to debt collectors. That's how is that opportunity in America?
Yeah.
When the way a lot of kids get opportunity, look, I believe in career tech ed, and I think we have to have different kind of pathways, but a lot of kids to get to opportunity in America, you got to go to college and you don't have the money to go to college, and they're basically just throttled the whole thing. And
Wow.
here in this, what they just did in New York, look, we won a lawsuit that basically said they can't rewrite the civil rights laws. So we won that lawsuit in August with, by the way, a judge appointed by Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But now what they're doing is they're taking these voluntary grants that they could actually pull, and they're pulling the voluntary grants.
Mm.
The regular formula funding, we won. They can't pull that because what they're trying to do today in New York City, in Chicago, is just rewrite the civil rights laws. And you can't. That's Congress. It takes
Exactly.
Congress to actually rewrite the civil rights laws.
Yeah, well, he wants to do everything through edict these days, and we have to remember how important public schools are in this country. I'm a product of the Fairfax County public school system. I'm the product of student loans. I had student loans to go to a state university in Virginia. I'm very proud of that. Went to James Madison, and none of that would be possible without the commitment that we have to public education in this
Exactly.
country. And my dad is a
Exactly.
Cuban refugee. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Randy, your book is incredible. I'm so glad that you took the fearless route here. You could have, along with your publisher and your representatives and so on, kind of, was down the title there to avoid controversy and so on. But I love the fact that you're taking on the controversy and still taking on those battles, Randy. It's so great to talk to you.
Thank you, Jim. I really, really appreciate it. And look, I I hope people read it, and I hope people see not only the warning and heed the warning, but see the hope. And that's who
Yeah,
school teachers in America are. They are nation builders and they are hope agents. And
they really are.
I hope people see it.
I will. And I can't wait to put on my paperclip. I'm going to go put one on after the show is over.
Fantastic.
So great to see you, Randy. Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
Jim.
We're all going to get out our paperclips. Take care. Safe travels.
Take
The wonderful Randi Weingarten from the American Federation of Teachers. I hadn't heard of release the Kimmel files as a potential hashtag yet, but I think Randy came up with it. Let's bring in Adam Parkhomenko, Democratic strategist. He might have a few thoughts on Kimmel and so on. Hey, Adam, great to see you. Adam runs the
Good to
Alt
see.
Media Substack. And my man, you and I have been talking about doing this for some time. I'm glad we finally made this happen.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I love the fact that, first of all, Randi is the best. I've known her for 20 years. She has an incredible new book.
Yeah.
And I love that you can just keep going on an interview and not have to worry about a commercial break or a deadline here.
Exactly. This is independent media. We don't deal with that corporate bullshit. You know, we don't have, you know, nervous executives wringing their hands in a boardroom or an office saying, "Oh gosh, Jim and Adam, we got to make sure they don't say anything controversial." You know, we got to make sure.
Exactly. And we were texting before, and I knew
Yeah.
that Randi was going a little long, so I figured I had enough time to take a shower after all of today's news. So appreciate
No,
that too.
we all need a shower after this week, I think. Adam, I'm sure you saw the new Epstein file documents came out. Let's talk about this. The House Oversight Dems put out some new documents this afternoon. And one of the documents, I'm sure people are starting to come to grips with this at this moment, but one of the documents shows apparently Elon Musk was slated or scheduled at some point to go to the Epstein Island, it says, back in December of 2014.
And as soon as I saw this come through, I saw there was a Randi Weingarten and an Adam P. And so I had to look a little closer here just to make, but these are not Randi Weingarten or Adam
No, nor Adam Parkhomenko. But it also mentions Prince Andrew is mentioned here. Steve Bannon is mentioned in these documents. Peter Thiel is mentioned in one of these documents. Bill Clinton, I think, is also mentioned, and Larry Summers. So, I mean, the House Oversight Dem said, hey, you know what? We're putting out documents. Doesn't matter if it's Republicans or Democrats. But what's amazing about this, Adam, is, earlier over the summer, it was Elon Musk who said, yeah, Donald Trump won't release the Epstein files because he's in the Epstein files. I guess Elon Musk had some authority in this subject.
Yeah. I mean, what's so interesting to me is, when there was sort of that at least first or second temporary breakup between Elon and Donald, we saw that sort of famous tweet, from Elon talking about Trump being in the Epstein files. And I think this was a little bit of a surprise for a lot of people. For a long time, we've heard Steve Bannon wanted to build a wall, and Elon Musk wants to build on Mars. But turns out that those were both excuses for just hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein.
I mean, it's something weird. And I guess we're starting to peel back the layers of the onion. But this is why Donald Trump does not want to release the Epstein files. His buddies are in there. His donors are in there. I mean, it's starting to make a little more sense. I mean, he's in there, obviously.
I think one of the weirdest things from like a political consultant standpoint is, why would you spend so much time during a campaign talking about getting to the bottom of the Jeffrey Epstein list and getting in office and releasing the Epstein list and so forth, ultimately to have your FBI director come out and, of all people, be asked by Senator Kennedy, right? Is there an Epstein list? Who's on it? And his response was, there was only one person who trafficked women and girls on this list, and that was Jeffrey Epstein, putting aside the fact that, Maxwell is where she is. But the idea that these individuals not only ran a campaign on this, but are allegedly, and I say this as somebody who spent 15 years working for the Clintons, the Republicans are spending all their time right now protecting Bill Gates and Clinton. I mean, it's just very strange.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they're the ones who were saying all along, oh, the Clintons are going to be there and all these Democratic figures are going to be in there. And then I think as soon as Pam Bondi and Kash Patel had those FBI agents, go through the files and say, oh shit, there's Peter Thiel's in here. Elon Musk is in here. We better shut this. We better shut
and
this.
You're bringing up a different point probably that we should touch on. But the fact that we are where we are right now, first of all, the Wall Street Journal, when they reported the letters in the birthday book, one of the letters that was in the Wall Street Journal for comparison is a letter that I own. And I started working for Hillary back in 2003, and there was a bunch of crap that they were getting rid of. And at the time I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Letter from Donald Trump to Hillary Clinton, congratulating her on her win, not knowing very little about him. But ultimately, that signature was identical to the one in the book. And I think Republicans are very good at using, there's a difference between conspiracy theories and criminal conspiracies. Republicans are very good at using conspiracy theories to cover from and hide the criminal conspiracies that they are in fact involved in. What is a little strange to me here is that Elon would have put out the tweet that he did at the time, which ultimately I think was probably one of the few accurate things he's said on Donald Trump, given the fact that we learned what we did today. But with that said, it also makes sense why, putting aside the business and the money that Elon wants to make being involved with Donald Trump, that that relationship and breakup has continued to, bounce back and forth like a pendulum, seeing the two of them together in Arizona at the Charlie Kirk funeral, which again, Charlie Kirk should have never been killed. But to me, it wouldn't have been a funeral without fireworks, obviously, with Donald Trump.
No, of course. Yeah. And Adam, one of the things you and I talk about from time to time is just how lame the media coverage is of a lot of this stuff. And during Trump 2.0, it's about as lame. It's the lamest I've ever seen it. It's beyond lame. It's tragically awful and just completely not meeting the moment that we're in right now. Your thoughts on how the press has been covering this Trump 2.0?
It's a great question, and I think it's something that we all, probably you too, on this end, struggle with on a daily basis, because we speak about entities and legacy media as an umbrella, and when we hold those entities accountable for the lack of reporting or the lack of real questions, or exactly what the premise of your question is. Unfortunately, when somebody like me attacks that entity, it takes away from people like you at the time who were at CNN doing good work, right? And so it's always a tough balance. I mean, NBC's had a couple of really incredible reporters go over there recently, and same thing. Washington Post has recently lost an incredible reporter to NBC. I think legacy media as a whole is failing from the top down. Things are very draconian. I often say that, if the sort of older generation here is able to figure out how to put YouTube on their TV and get it in other ways, that'll be the end of it, because, survey after survey that we see shows that, YouTube and things like Substack and beyond is where people are getting their news. But with that said, it's sad to see, because there's folks that have put in their entire career, like you and many of other good friends, mutual friends of ours, that sort of get folded into that, who are trying to do their best.
Yeah. No, I like being in independent media now. I've enjoyed it. It's been great. I get to do what I want. I get to drop some F-bombs here and there. It's, I do what I want. It's great. There could be a government shutdown coming up in a few days. As putting your Democratic consultant hat back on, what should the Democrats do? I wrote a piece for Substack earlier in the day that they're talking about, Dems are saying, okay, we'll play ball with you guys if you can give us some Obamacare subsidies, to extend Obamacare subsidies, which is a great idea. That's totally fine. To me, I would say that we need a halt on ICE operations in this country for Democrats to go along with the Republicans and keeping the government running. What's happening with these ICE raids and the way that they're body slamming people and beating the shit out of people, it's totally out of control. But your thoughts on what the Democrats should do in this moment? That's just my 2 cents.
And just for my 2 cents, I totally agree with you, because I spent 15 years as a reserve with DC police, and it's really sad to see. I used to think that there was like 1 or 2 bad apples. Now I think that there's probably more than that are emboldened by what's going on. But in terms of the shutdown, my first response would probably be, hey, we need to play like Mitch McConnell. But the one thing I know about Mitch McConnell is he didn't really like shutdowns. So with that said, I think in general, Democrats need new leadership, right? I think people are always sort of surprised to hear this from me, having spent and sort of been branded as a Clinton person. But I think we've got 2 people from New York who are just not meeting the moment on the Democratic side. When you've got a mayor's race and somebody follows the process and does what they're supposed to do, and they don't receive the endorsement of the leaders, and the leaders, at least one leader on the House side, decides that they're going to vote for a Charlie Kirk resolution before they endorse the guy who went through the process and won the Democratic nomination for mayor.
Jeffrey's not supporting
Hakeem. It's a problem. Same thing with Jay Jacobs, who is a longtime friend of mine. But Jay Jacobs should not be the state party chair. He's been a great bundler, great donor, But if you're going to not endorsing that, you shouldn't be there. With that said, putting that aside, and I think Hakeem's done a good job holding the caucus together, I think that we should shut the government down. And it's not going to be us. It's going to be the Republicans. We need to step up and play like them. It's the same thing I've said for years about Citizens United. You can be against Citizens United, but it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. We cannot unilaterally disarm as Democrats anymore. We have to fight fire with fire. I've been saying it for 6 years. A lot of people used to give me a ton of shit about it. And we are, where we are today. And I think it's time that Democrats really step up. There's been polls recently that have come out that show that people look to folks like AOC as leaders. Our party spends more time trying to minimize the voices of people like Jasmine Crockett than they do lifting them up. And one thing that Bill Clinton told me back in 2002 that has always stuck with me is, winning is about addition, not subtraction. And I think that this party spends more time focused on what we can do to silence important voices or play by the rules like they existed when we had, people like our law and order friend from Tennessee in the Senate and John McCain and others, Craig Smith of Wyoming, a U.S. Senate where you used to be able to name all 100 senators and you had respect no matter who they were. Lindsey Graham, who at the time when I worked for Hillary, used to do Bible study every Sunday with Hillary Clinton. That's not where we are today. And we need to,
it's been ripped to shreds. Yeah.
It's been ripped to shreds and we need to fight back. We need to stop this, but we also need to look ahead, and assuming there are going to be elections, we need to prepare to make sure we have the right leadership so that if we do take things back, we don't play like we've been playing year after year after year.
Yeah. Well, and people forget, Bill Clinton was hardly the establishment choice back in 1992 when he became the Democratic nominee and then won the presidency. He took the country by storm. He didn't really build a movement, I guess, in the way that Barack Obama or Bernie Sanders built a movement. He just outsmarted and out-hustled a lot of establishment politicians at that time. And so people forget that he was a bit of an upstart back in the day.
That's such a good point that you make.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize, and I think Craig Smith from Arkansas back in the day. What they did was, I think it was November or December, but they got in 1991 right at the end. And it was something that Hillary Clinton always wished that she could do, was have a very short campaign. When she ran against Donald Trump, that wasn't the case based on when he got in. But Barack Obama was something very special in the coming back from obviously when he gave that critical speech in 2004 at John Kerry's convention.
Yeah, and Barack Obama was not the establishment choice. Hillary Clinton was the establishment choice in 2008, and Barack Obama, David Axelrod, and those guys said, "Well, hey, we're gonna elbow you out of the way, and this is going to be us." And I think that's how democratic politics work. And it's a little surprising to me to see the leaders sort of kind of hold Mom Donnie, by the wayside there, and not give him the chance that he's earned. He's earned this chance in New York.
Yeah, to me, it's shocking. To go back, and I've been very critical of my party on a couple New York. I've said we have a New York problem in New York and in DC. That being, when things started happening with Eric Adams, our leaders refused to say anything. And at the time, Hochul was in the same spot. To me, this was a layup. If anybody has somehow learned from that lesson, it was the governor of New York, who, despite the fact that, she came out and triangulated a little bit in her endorsement, she still made the endorsement.
She did it.
And,
Kathy Hochul
and she did it in a way, that I think people were comfortable with. Yeah,
I have to say, there are times when I'm very impressed by Kathy Hochul, and people might want to throw a shoe at me for saying that, but I think she's settled things down in New York, and it's it's not Andrew Cuomo, it's not been a shit show, at least not yet. At least we hope not. But
I'll say, Jim, the other thing too, to me, that was a little surprising, knowing Bill Clinton as well as I do, is when he got behind Cuomo in that primary. If you go back to his administration, there were two people that he never was really a fan of in the administration, and that was Bill Richardson and Andrew Cuomo. So when I saw Bill Clinton come out and endorse Andrew Cuomo, to me, that was like, all right, they're all in throughout the party to do, whatever they can to stop this guy. And I think the guy carried pretty much everything except for maybe, Nadler's district, which will be an interesting congressional race.
That will be interesting,
considering that Cuomo outperformed him there. But again, people in New York, even in that race, need to remember that you're going to have people who voted for Andrew Cuomo, and you're going to have people that voted for Zoran that might be interested in you. So once again, be about addition, not subtraction.
And I think the Dems are just a little bit in the wilderness right now. This happens when you're out of power and you kind of don't know what you're doing, and you're fumbling around, you're in the forest. And I was started to write about this, and then I got pissed off about the ICE raid, so I wrote about that. But I really enjoyed the excerpt from Kamala Harris's book where she outs Gavin Newsom for going hiking and not calling her back when she was in this pickle, after Joe Biden had that disastrous debate performance. And she was like, what do I do? Should I jump in? How should I do this? And she reached out to Gavin Newsom, and he texted back, gone hiking. And then she wrote, he never got back to me, or something like that. And I just thought for a moment there, I was like, okay, we need more of that, where she just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to put it in my book. And, and I just, there's sort of an authenticity deficit in the Democratic Party right now. And whenever we see glimmers of it, I think the folks at home are saying, aha, that's it. I want that. It's like that meme of Leo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. They're pointing at the TV and saying, that's what I want.
It's like the two.
You
it's
know
like
what
the
I
split
mean?
screen we have right now. Yeah, look, I think that look, first of all, that's so true. It's something that people wanted to see more of from Hillary, right? And Hillary is, I've basically spent my entire adult life one way or another working with her, and she's 1,000 times smarter. So I will never be in a position to criticize her thinking and all that. However, the Hillary that I know is the Hillary, that when we had our baby and we had an issue, she was the first person there, and she got us a night nurse for a month, and she talks exactly the way that you were just talking. And so Hillary has said this before, and so has Kamala, but the higher that women, Hillary's words, reach, the more their negatives go down, or negatives go up, the more they're hated and so forth. Yeah. And I think what we saw from Kamala is her truth, her story, something that not only she deserves to tell, but we've gone basically 9-10 months with people telling her story for her. And the Gavin piece, I think, goes twofold. One, there's a history between the two of them. When he was running for governor, senator, a pause, sort of, who's going to run for what, kind of the same thing we see in Ohio right now with Sherrod Brown, and whether Tim Ryan's ultimately going to run for governor. But at the same time, she'll probably be the first to say that Gavin was one of the best communicators and surrogates that was out there after that. But to me, on his part, that was political malpractice. And but she also owned it at the start. She said that she wishes that she had stepped up and said something where there was just sort of this assumption that Joe Biden was running again. Joe Biden was the perfect candidate at the perfect time to bring this country together, win and heal this country. He was not who we should have had, and for reelection, and it just sort of moved so quickly. There was never a conversation about it.
Yeah, we should do this again, Adam, because I want to talk about this stuff further. And when you get rolling on Democratic politics, it's really fun. Because the other thing I was going to say is, I think Kamala Harris should have picked Pete Buttigieg.
I do too. And I had a whole conversation with Waj Ali about this the other day. Again, I think that would have brought out a lot more people than some of the folks that decided to stay home. Our party is always too afraid of our base. And I always say Republicans don't win elections. Democrats lose them, and they speak to their base. And it is time that we listen to our base, we bring them together, and we do these things that are risky, but high risk, high reward.
Totally. Absolutely. Great to see you, man. Great to see you, Adam. Let's do it again soon.
For having me.
All right. Good to see you. Take care. I want to quickly go to my buddy, Nick Valencia, because I woke up. Nick Valencia, how are you, man? Good to see you.
Hey, Jim. So thankful you invited me on. Thanks, man.
No, of course. I woke up this morning and I, as we all do, pick up my phone. I start going through my socials. I'm looking at the videos that are in there and stuff. And there must have been 3 or 4 crazy, batshit crazy videos of ICE agents, tackling people, body slamming people, wrestling them to the ground, men, women, legally in the country, undocumented, you name it. And I guess we have some video. There's one in Iowa, right? We can show the one in Iowa City. You won't even identify. This is the one right here.
Yeah, and it's like worse than the next.
I can videotape. I'm a combat vet. No, I'm a combat vet.
Look at this.
Are you a... Then where's this cop? Are you a cop?
So
Are you ICE or a cop? Hey, are
this
you
goes on
ICE
for
or
several
a
minutes,
cop?
and one of the officers pulls out a taser. It looks like he wanted to tase him at one point. Nick, you've been covering this stuff extensively. It feels like it's getting worse, what we're seeing.
You know, and these are the kinds of videos that we saw very early on out of Los Angeles when the Trump deportation army hit the streets of LA, when
Yeah.
ICE, was the siege of Los Angeles in those first weeks of June. This is a direct result of the hiring spree and the fast tracking of unqualified people. You have the bonuses, you're lowering the requirements and the standards. And now, Jim, what you're getting, what we're all seeing now, what we're waking up to is videos of these incidents, which are already very traumatic to begin with. They're already, when you go and basically this is family separation 2.0, you're going to expect to encounter some resistance with these family members, especially now. And what we're seeing in these videos is exactly what you talked about. We're not seeing a de-escalation of the situation. We're not seeing, these animated feelings, these big feelings be tempered down. We're seeing these ICE agents who are responsible for keeping things safe out there, really, while they're doing their job, and they're making things worse. And I bring that up, what we talked about or what we saw in Los Angeles. There was a lot of people that were very concerned early on about these men basically being on the streets in mass, unidentified, not wearing badges. And that's exactly what we saw in the Des Moines video that you're playing there.
Yeah.
Two men, plain clothes, who knows who they are?
And here's another one in Hyattsville, Maryland. This guy was tackled in the middle of the street. Channel 4 in Washington played this one. This is just right outside D.C. And the ICE agent here, the ICE officer here, is pulls out his gun at one point and starts waving it around at the bystanders who are videotaping this.
Yeah, it's really crazy here. It's like clearly he's, it's like the Keystone Cops here. Such a clumsy detention. His gun, you'll see here, he reaches for it. It drops to the ground. It appears as though the man that's being taken into custody may have pushed it away. But then this is what's really crazy here. He draws his weapon and then he points it at the bystanders, and this is the fear that people have had is who are these individuals who are on the streets? What kind of qualifications do they have? And it really gets into some of our reporting that we got out earlier. We heard some of these cities were going to start checking the IDs of these suspected federal agents. We heard that happen in Los Angeles. We filed an open records request, a California open records request in Los Angeles. There was really a dramatic press conference in late June. The city was a powder keg, and the cops came out and said, look, these videos that you see, these really dramatic detentions where people are in mass, we're going to start verifying people. So we waited 3 months, and in good faith, we put in an open records request, Jim. We got the records back. Either they've not done it at all, and it was really just sort of, performance to try to get the city to calm down, or it's been a haphazard way of keeping records. But the fear is really what we're seeing now is this hiring spree of ICE agents, underqualified people that are fanned out across the country and are ratcheting up these arrests and these detentions. Someone's going to get hurt. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, and we have to say, I mean, I'll just say it, that what took place in Dallas earlier this week was unconscionable. It was an attack on, it appears, ICE agents. We don't have the full results of the investigation. The shooter ended up killing 2 migrants, it appears. All of that is just absolutely awful, but it's happening in the middle of what has become a very intense climate of fear in this country surrounding these ICE operations. And it seems to me somebody's got to call the timeout here and put the pause button in place on these operations, because it just seems out of control. I noticed that National Public Radio did a piece on this just recently, where they went to an ICE recruitment event, and they found a lot of people who are signing up to become ICE agents are Trump supporters. They're people who say they love Trump and are attracted to what they see on, say, Stephen Miller's social media feed and so on. I mean, this is part of the reason why you're seeing these things take place.
And we're seeing a lack of humanity, a lack of empathy and compassion, and we're seeing it becoming sort of one of the talking points from the Republicans in this Trump 2.0 era. And I am, I'm 42. I'm still old enough to remember the era of the compassionate conservative, and that seems to have been wiped away. And it's sort of like selective compassion, right? Be compassionate for Charlie Kirk. Be compassionate for the ICE agents who were targeted. No mention of the actual detainee who was shot and killed by our DHS secretary. When they talk about these incidents, it's like, what you're saying is unkind, and our attacks on ICE is the result of the rhetoric being spread out, unwilling to even acknowledge that the same rhetoric is coming out of their party. And so it's not in good faith. And what we're seeing right now is what we've been seeing for the last 3 months, sort of emerge from Los Angeles and spread across the country, is the federal government not moving in good faith and not following the rules, basically. And now this is the chaos on the streets. Cruelty is the point where you have, thousands basically of unqualified, untrained Keystone cops out there in charge of immigration customs enforcement. And
there's no
it's
question.
resulting in these crazy videos that we're seeing.
That's right. And they're not just doing it to migrants or undocumented people. They did it to a woman who is running for Congress in Illinois. I believe we have that video too. She's running for Congress in Illinois. She was protesting outside of one of these facilities. Look at this.
But essentially, a
Gets
car was
thrown to
about
the
to run
ground.
over a fellow protester.
and you-
And so I went to check
her
on that
talking right
person. And that was all the justification an officer needed to pick me up and throw me to the ground, despite being half his size.
And I'm sure, Nick, you saw that one too.
Yeah, I saw that one too, and anyone can get it right now. And we know that, the activists, the people, the lawmakers that go to these detention facilities who have been denied access or have been roughed up like this representative here.
Yeah, it's Kat Abu Ghazala. She's running for Congress in Illinois. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And Tom Homan has made himself clear that, anyone can get it. And so this goes back to my point. It's like, it's not this selective with the scalpel going after just the bad actors, those that are violent criminals. Look, Jim, no one wants pedophiles living next door to them. No one wants violent criminals, murderers. I think everyone, the left gets painted with this broad stroke that we want everyone in, that like it just open borders. No one wants violent criminals here. The fact is, though, that the administration is not just going after the criminals. They're going after the cooks. They're going after anyone that gets in the way. And again, I know I keep bringing up California, but that was the testing ground early on. We're seeing activists targeted. We saw the state attorney there basically trump up charges. You get this headline of them going after and being tough on the activists, and then very quietly these charges are dismissed. So they get the headline of acting tough on the activists and overcharging effectively, and then quietly the charges are dismissed. So it's like you said, the representative, it's the undocumented immigrant, it's the American citizen. Anyone can get it in Trump's America.
No question about it. Nick Valencia, great to see you as always, my
Great
man.
to see you too.
Let's not let
Thanks for
too
having
much
me on.
time pass before the next time. Absolutely. Well, you covered it so closely, and this is not ending. And until somebody figures out a way to slow Trump's roll when it comes to this mass deportation operation that we're seeing in this country right now, we're going to see more abuses like this. And I think, Nick, you're absolutely right. We're going to get to a point where you're going to see a lot of people get hurt and possibly die because of this kind of activity. And it's just not who we are as a country.
No, not at all. I really appreciate you highlighting this and continue to come back to this issue, Jim. We're focused on it at Nick Valencia News. If you guys want to know more about what's going on with immigration on a daily basis, we've got exclusive reporting there, constantly getting scoops. Thank you so much for having us on.
You got it, Nick. Great reporting as always. We'll check you out there. Thanks, Nick. Have a great weekend. And I want to end very quickly. I don't have a whole closing monologue, except to say that I want to remember a friend of mine who passed away. The legendary Washington attorney, book agent, you name it, he's done it all. Bob Barnett, there he is right there. He passed away at the age of 79 years old. Bob was an attorney of mine for several years, but listen, I was one of the little fish in Bob's pond. Speaking of Bill Clinton, I was on the phone with Bob one time, and Bob says, "Jim, can you hold on a second?" And he came back and goes, "Jim, I've got President Clinton on the other line. I've got to go." I said, "Bob, I think you better take that call. You go right ahead." But that's kind of who Bob Barnett was. He was an attorney to just the absolute biggest movers and shakers in Washington, D.C., in the media world, in politics. He told me that he had represented Jesse Waters over at Fox, in addition to yours truly. So Bob had clients all over the place. But the thing that made Bob so special is the way he would pass on his wise counsel. There would be times when I would get frustrated and flustered over this, that, or the other thing in my daily work, and he would just say, "Jim, just let it go. Just let it go." He had a way of, he had a grandfatherly and fatherly way of just putting his hand on your shoulder and talking some sense to you. And, you know, the reason I had him on my show back at my old place, and one of the reasons I had him on is because Bob was a legendary debate prep professional. He was the person that you would turn to prepare for presidential debates. He helped Bill Clinton prepare for his debates. And obviously he aced those tests. He helped prepare Geraldine Ferraro when she was Walter Mondale's running mate back in 1984 and so on. And so Bob was just one of those institutions in Washington. You could walk into a famous DC restaurant like the Occidental and see Bob there meeting with some big mover and shaker and having some important conversation that you wish you could listen in on because you knew that something very important was being talked about. But Bob is also, I think, a reflection of a different Washington that used to exist, where Democrats and Republicans could sit around the same lunch table or dinner table, break bread with one another, and put aside their differences and just have a martini, have a steak, get to know one another a little bit better. And I do mourn Bob's passing. I send on my condolences to his wife, Rita Braver, the legendary CBS News correspondent. But I also mourn what Bob represented, and that is a Washington that is no longer with us, at least not right now, where both sides could have a civil dialogue. Both sides could engage in a civil debate over the issues. And Bob was a master of preparing his side for those debates. And I suspect he's handing out debate tips wherever he is right now. So Bob Barnett, the legendary icon of Washington politics and lawyering, he has passed away at the age of 79. Rest in peace, Bob. Thanks so much. And thanks to all of you for watching this week. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. Have a great weekend.